Hi, this is Chongkim, and today we're going to write palindrome in C and in Ruby, and we're going to compare the running time between them using benchmark. So let's start by creating the directory. All right. So we start off with an empty directory, and we're going to create the gem file. Okay, so then we run bundle to install it, and we make the directories lib and speclib, and that should be good. Let's take a look at the we have to initialize the guard file. Let's take a look at the guard file now. And there's a bunch of stuff that we don't need, so we'll just get rid of those. And let's see. Okay, so what we're going to do is modify this so that it also runs the tests when you run the bundle, when the bundle changes, and the bundle gets compiled whenever there's a change to the C or H file. That will trigger going to the lib directory and running make, and running make would generate the bundle from the C source code. Okay, so this looks pretty good. So let's leave it like this and just run guard. Okay, start with the we start with the tests. So palindrome spec RB. All right, palindrome. So let's start with the Ruby version. Ruby palindrome. Actually, let's call it rpal dot palindrome. Okay, so the test would be for an empty string. It checks the empty string. So we put it under the rpal module, the namespace, and call palindrome against an empty string, and that should equal that should be true. So we'll just assume that an empty string would be considered palindrome. Okay. Actually, let me write this in the new form, because this is the way that RSpec wants you to use it now. So expect palindrome to be true. And the reason why is because the should form, when you have a should over here, is monkey patched against the objects, and that can cause some problems when you're using delegates or something that's not based off the kernel. So this using an expect and wrapping it around the function, around the object, solves that problem. So they want you to use this syntax now. Okay, so it expects the palindrome to be true, and actually we also need to require the lib cpal. Oh, no, the rpal. Just call it rpal. Actually, yes. So because we're doing it that way, we're going to need to modify the guard file again. So here, this is based off the file name. So if I have it called cpal, then it'll run cpal spec. But I'm going to make this run, for both of these, I'm going to make it run the palindrome spec. Okay, so when either of these get detected, I also need to restart RSpec, the guard. Okay, so it has the first error, which is that the cannot load rpal because we didn't create that yet. So let's create that file. Okay, so we need to create the module rpal, and inside we need the palindrome function that takes a string. And for now, we'll just leave it blank. And oh yeah, we need to, I think we already restarted. Okay, cannot load rpal. So let's see why this is wrong. Lib rpal. Oh, the reason is because for some reason it needs to have a relative path. Okay, so now this works. Okay, so it's saying that the palindrome undefined method palindrome, but we do have palindrome over here, and the reason why is because we need to make this a self. Okay, so when you make it when you put a self over here, that means that you're able to access the function directly from the module. Okay, so that worked. So this is the expected result of the test. Okay, so let's make this pass. The easiest way is just to return true. Okay, let me put that there. Okay, so now we go on to the next test. The next test, let's checks one character. So this should also be true. Okay, we should really start with a failing test, but let's see, like if I had just comment this out, we could see that it's failing. We'll put that back in, and okay. So the next thing, let's do something a little more real. Checks a palindrome. Okay, well, so something a little bit bigger, like see, redder. Okay, so that should be true, and then there's checks a non-palindrome and about. And that should be false. Okay, so let's test against this, and we should have a failure. Okay, so we have a failure on about. So let's write the algorithm. Okay, I'm gonna write a very simple algorithm. I'm gonna have an index called first and last, and the last is the last position, and that should be the length minus 1 since it's 0 based, and we're gonna loop through while the first is less than the last. And we know if it's not a palindrome if the first character does not equal the last character. Okay, so that's our test. And actually, I'm going to write it a different way. I'm going to write it this way. The reason why is because I want to use the same algorithm in the same form for C. So, so my C program should look pretty much like this. Okay, then we also need to increment the first, and we need to decrement the last. Okay, and then if you go through all of them, that means that it is a palindrome, so we return true. Okay, so this is our test, and let's see if this passes. So this passes. Okay, so it passes all the tests, and it looks good. So now we're going to write the C version of this. So let's go back to the test over here, and I am going to write the C palindrome version. And the C pal. Okay, so basically it's all the same test, and now it should fail. There's a whole bunch of failures because I didn't write cpal. So let's start writing that. So that's the cpal.c. And we need to include the Ruby header so that we have access to all this. So we have a function that returns a value, and the functions can be palindrome, which takes the first argument is going to be the self object. The second is the actual value, which is the string that we're going to take a look at. And the code, we're going to make it look exactly like, well, sort of like the ARP, the Ruby version. So, the first thing we need to do is convert this Ruby string structure into a regular string. So let's do that. So s is equal to string value c stir of s value. And this converts it into a string. Then we can run the rest of the code. So the first is 0. Actually, it might be easier if I just took this code and just converted it. Okay. All right. So long, instead of length, it's using string length of s. Okay. And the while loop should contain curly braces instead of begin and end. Okay, and let's just reformat this. All right, and let's see what else. We need semicolons here. Okay, and for the if condition, we need this, and we don't need that. We need semicolons, and another semicolon here. So, and instead of true and false, it's going to be q false and q true. So that should take care of the algorithm. Let's see. Well, the other thing that we need is the init. So it's takes a void and it's init cpal. Okay, so because we're requiring cpal, it's going to look for init cpal to initialize everything. And to do that, we need to write the code to create the module. So that would be rb underscore define module, and that would be and we're going to call it cpal. Okay, and this is going to be a value. We're going to store a cpal module, and now we associate the function. So rb define singleton method. Now call it singleton because the singleton would make it the self. That handles the self part of it, and we're going to define the method, and the first argument is going to be the class or module. In this case, it's a cpal module. So whatever the method that we're going to be associating is going to be put under the cpal module. And the function, we're going to be calling it palindrome and associated with palindrome, and it takes one argument. So now we're set. The next thing we need is the ext.conf file, which creates the make file. So we require the mkmf, and all of this is failing because the make file doesn't exist. So create make file for cpal. Okay, so that should be good. Now we have to create it. Okay, we do that by running the ext.conf file, and that creates the make file. So there it is. And we can test that this works by going back to the C file, saving, and that should trigger a compilation, and it linked the bundle. And let's go back to the test, and let's save that to trigger the test. And we can see now that the Ruby version and the C version both work. So now that we have both of them working, let's put that into a benchmark. We don't need to run guard anymore because we're done with the test, and now we're going to write the main code, which is just going to run it and see how long they take. So let's call this palindrome benchmark. Okay. Okay, let's just make this the only window. All right, so we're going to require the C version of palindrome, and we're going to require the Ruby version of palindrome, and we're going to require benchmark. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a bunch of words, and that is by opening the user share dict words, and that file user share dict as in dictionary words looks like this. It's a bunch of words, and so we're going to go through each one of these and see which ones are palindromes. So we're going to open this. For each line, we're going to put those words line, but the line has a carriage return at the end, so we're going to chomp that out. So now we have a list of words, and we're going to go through it. So words.each do word, and if let's use the Ruby version, the rpal.palindrome. If it is a palindrome, then let's just print it out. Okay, so this is really a check. So if I run this code now, okay, let me change the permissions on this so that it's executable. Okay, so I run the palindrome benchmark. Okay, there's an error, cannot load cpal. Oh, that's because it's in lib. Okay, so we run it again, and here you can see that it works. So all of these are palindromes. So okay, so now that we know that this is working, we're going to test how quick the Ruby version of palindrome is compared to the C version. So we're not going to output anything. We're just going to just run this, and so there's benchmark. Okay, so this is how you would run it. Report, I would say Ruby version, and okay, inside here is this. Okay, and I'll just make a copy of this because I'm going to compare that to the C version. Okay, I'm putting spaces here so that the labels line up. Otherwise, it'll be very jagged. So this version, I'm going to run the C version. So here's the Ruby version of palindrome. Here's the C version. I'm going to run it, and let's see how long this takes. So okay, so you can see that the C version is faster. Looks like about 7 times faster. So and we can run this like multiple times. So n equals 10 and n times okay, so n times do, and put an extra n there. So running it 10 times, you can see that it's still about 6 or 7 times faster. So this is a good reason why you should run things and see if you need to have the performance.